One hammer, one chisel, and a ridge that stood in the way. The rock ridge sat between the village and everything that helped when life went wrong. On one side, Galar moved at its usual pace. Courtyards swept in the morning, tin pots clinking at the hand pump, children sent out with small errands, men leaving for day labor with cloth bags slung over a shoulder. On the other side were doctors, schools, markets, real places, just not close enough when someone was bleeding, burning with fever, or struggling to breathe. To go around the ridge meant taking the long route, hours, not the kind of journey you planned for, more the kind you endured, because there wasn't another option. One afternoon, a man came to the base of that wall of stone with a hammer and a chisel that looked borrowed from another lifetime. The metal was worn smooth where a hand had gripped it too many days in a row. His name was Dashrath Manjhi. He didn't arrive with helpers or a speech or any sign that this was going to become a story people would repeat for decades. He looked like someone who had already worked since sunrise and was about to work a little more. He placed the chisel against the rock and struck. The sound was sharp, almost small. It didn't echo the way you'd hope. The ridge stayed exactly as it was. People noticed. In a village, you notice anything that breaks routine. Someone paused with a bundle of fodder. Someone else slowed with a bucket swinging in their hand. A boy stood too close, ready to run if the grown-ups told him to. "What's he doing?" someone asked. "Cutting the hill," another person said, like it was an odd hobby. Dashrath struck again. Tap, tap, tap. At first, nothing changed in a way anyone could brag about. Just tiny flakes of stone, pale dust settling on darker rock. A thin scratch that would have looked meaningless to anyone walking past quickly. But Dashrath wasn't working for quick. Years earlier, his wife had been injured badly while crossing that ridge to bring him food. The path was steep and uneven. People slipped there. Everyone knew it. Some came home bruised and some didn't. She didn't survive the delay in getting help. Dashrath didn't talk about it like it was a tragedy meant for other people's sympathy. He carried it like a weight he refused to put down. Not dramatic, just present. He went back to the ridge and began making an opening where there hadn't been one. The first season passed, the heat came back, then the cold, then the heat again. At the start, the village watched him the way you would watch something strange. Curious at first, then bored, then slightly irritated, like his persistence was somehow accusing everyone else of something. Some men laughed when they passed. "You'll wear out before that rock does. You can't cut through a mountain. Go do work that pays." The last one had a quiet irony to it. Dashrath did work that paid. He had to. He did day labor when he could get it. Like many others, he wasn't choosing between survival and the ridge. He was choosing the ridge in addition to survival. Some evenings he walked home coated in white grit, his hair looking gray before its time. He'd shake his head at the doorway and a little cloud would fall off him. Once someone joked he looked like he'd been milling flour all day and forgotten the grain. It wasn't a big laugh, more like the kind of humor that slips out because people don't know what else to say. There were days the stone barely gave him anything. Days his hands hurt so much he changed how he held the tools. Days the sun made the air feel heavy, and the hammers seemed to gain weight with every lift. Still, he came back. Tap, tap, tap. Over time, the ridge showed a mark. A shallow groove at first, then a notch, then a narrow space where you could stand and feel a strip of shade, like the rock was finally allowing one small kindness. And 22 years didn't arrive like a dramatic montage. It arrived like repetition, waking up and doing it again, doing it on days no one watched, doing it when people watched just to shake their heads, doing it when laughter drifted over like a stone tossed from a distance, small enough not to bruise, but enough to remind you how alone a person can be inside their own decision. The cut deepened. It widened. It became something you could point to and say without joking, "Look." The contrast was plain. The ridge was old, massive, unmoving. Dashrath was one man with one pair of hands, one hammer, one chisel. Yet the ridge had to face him every day. And slowly the village's tone changed. Mockery doesn't last forever when the person you're mocking keeps showing up. It turns to confusion, then into a kind of reluctant respect that people don't know how to admit out loud. A few villagers began leaving him water, a little food. Once in a while, someone offered a better tool or a few minutes of help. Not crowds, not celebration, just practical gestures from people who'd started to believe the opening might actually happen. The groove stopped being that thing that Dashrath is doing and started being the path. By the end, it measured 110 meters long, wide enough for people to pass through without turning sideways, deep enough that the air inside felt different, cooler, quieter, like the ridge had been hollowed into a corridor. The long detour shrank. What used to take hours became something people could do without planning their whole day around it. The final moment wasn't loud. It was almost ordinary. Just one thin layer of rock left, and word moving through the village in the usual way. Quietly, quickly, passed from one person to the next like a shared secret. He was close. People gathered without ceremony. Children edged forward. Older men stood with hands clasped behind their backs. Women watched from a little distance, faces unreadable in the sunlight. Dashrath stood at the last bit of stone. He raised the hammer. Tap! Again. Tap! No special echo, no dramatic collapse, just the rock giving way the way it always had, slowly, stubbornly, until it finally did. Light slid through in a straight line. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone stepped forward just to see. Then another. Then more. They walked up and saw. It was really happening. And the real change wasn't the breakthrough itself. It was what happened after in ordinary life. A sick person could reach help without hours of carrying. A child could get to school without the same risk. A farmer could take produce to market without losing the day to a ridge that didn't care. And later, when an ambulance used the passage, it meant urgency could finally travel like urgency should. The ridge remained, it always would, but it no longer decided everything. Dashrath didn't turn into a different kind of man at the end. He was still thin, weathered, steady, still human. But the place around him had shifted because he kept showing up. Years later, you could run your hand along the chisel marks in the stone. Rough lines repeated until the ridge opened. You could walk through and feel the air change on your skin. A passage that once sounded foolish, now plainly there. One person's love turned into something you could walk on. He didn't wait for the mountain to be kinder. He worked until it made room. Today, people pass through on foot, on bikes, in vehicles. Most don't stop to think about the first strike of that old chisel. They just get where they need to go. And that, in the end, was enough. Be Happy Stories, everyday kindness, real warmth. Thanks for listening.